Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Jazakumullah khair for joining us today. Sorry we kind of like just started a little bit late, just 5 minutes, but just to give people the chance to be able to come in and hopefully join. First of all, I'd like to start off with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most beneficial. My name is Fatma Halawa, and I'd like to welcome you all, our dear Sakeena seekers, to this to our first virtual halaqah, where we're hoping to have a series of sessions, and our goal is to try and reach into deeper into our hearts and remember the true meaning of our existence, and that is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For we are slaves to Allah before anything or anyone else, and I think that's very important for us to always remember. Our goal is to provide you with a variety of content during this blessed month of Ramadan, with various discussions surrounding the Quran, our health, both physically and mentally, and some practical life hacks on how we can incorporate worship or our ibadah into our daily lives. And I think it becomes a space where we can virtually connect, specifically during this very unique Ramadan that we have. I'm gonna today, who will be giving us the session is Sana, and I'm gonna leave it down. I'm gonna leave the floor to Sana soon. But just before kind of like leaving the floor to Sana, I think what's really important is just to kind of like have a consistency throughout. And what will be very important is just so hopefully Sana will go over through her talk, and then after, by the end, if someone has a reflection they'd like to share, an input they'd like to share, but then also if they have a question, then potentially we could have that. And there's the raise the button, or even potentially just sending the questions on to me, and then hopefully inshallah we can discuss it. So I'm just going to introduce briefly Sana. So Sana is an Algerian American who moved to Ireland in 2015, and mashallah, she's currently doing a doctoral candidate in nutrition at University College Dublin. And yeah, so I'm gonna pass the floor on to Sana now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I want to start out by saying Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Let us all begin by giving gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala today. I also want to begin by renewing our intentions by asking Allah to bless today's session and shower us with His blessings, inshallah. In today's talk, we will discuss how we can find solace while in isolation. We know that this Ramadan is very, very unique for all of us, maybe for our parents and grandparents, because it's the first time in the Ramadan that we're going through this in isolation, only with those that live with us in the home. This Ramadan really does stand out, as we can't take part in any gatherings or congregational prayers, the Taraweeh prayers at the mosque. So we might be feeling a little bit of discomfort, and I know we think that it might be imaginable and maybe a little bit irritating, but I want everyone to stop themselves in the midst of their daily lives, take a deep breath and reflect, and give gratitude to the Most High. We need to ask ourselves, how reliant have we become on each other to help us increase our Iman and relationship with Allah? While this love for the community and doing things together is a great thing in Islam, let us not forget that we need to be able to be self-motivators when we're alone, to be self-starters, because that is what we Muslims are. We are the optimists in a time of pessimism. We are the trailblazers in a world where people think it's coming to an end. Why? Because we Muslims are believers before anything else. So let's use this isolation as an opportunity to say thank you, Allah, for this time to self-reflect. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Let us praise Allah for the wonderful blessings that surround us, for the fresh air that we are given to breathe, for the safe water that we're able to drink, for the fresh foods that we're able to afford and purchase and consume, for the safety that we have in this land. And while we enjoy His blessings, let us remember to make dua for those that are less fortunate, because we Muslims are not selfish. We look at all human beings around us with empathy. We don't just sympathize and feel sorry for others. We put ourselves in their shoes and then we try to help them out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, and what is the worldly life except the enjoyment of delusion? Let's ponder how the recent events have changed our lives. Certainly, we are living a life of delusion. The COVID-19 virus has discriminated against no one, has changed lives and lost lives. So where can we go to find answers on what to do while in isolation? How do we deal with the loneliness, and how do we stop ourselves from these feelings of despair? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with an ultimate go-to guide for everything in our life. So from our homes, which in Arabic, and one of the Arabic words from home is sakan or maskan, let us try to find the sakina, or tranquility, in our hearts through reflection by turning to the most gracious, most merciful, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran that it is He who sent down tranquility into the hearts of the believers, that they might have more of faith added to their faith. And to Allah are the hosts of the heavens and earth, and Allah is knowing and wise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge and wisdom, so that we may know Him and love Him. Ameen. So how do we attain solace? Allah tells us that it is He who sends down the tranquility into our hearts, so that we may increase in faith and worship. Faith, or Iman, and the people who are oftentimes mentioned in the Quran to display faith, al-mu'minun, are connected with two main attributes, prayer and charity. And subhanAllah, both of these attributes are those that we can complete in isolation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this many times, but one of the examples is when He says, a guide and good news for the believers who keep up prayer and pay charity, and for the hereafter they are certain. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us as part of the people who display Iman. In another ayah, Allah also tells us, O you who have believed, seek help through patience and prayer. Indeed, Allah is with the patient. If you're thinking to yourself, what is the connection between prayer and charity and patience? Prayer, charity, and patience all increase faith, but they also tame our heart. And this helps us develop our perseverance. And if we want to learn about perseverance, we don't need to look any further than reading the seerah, or the story and life of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, as well as other prophets and also elevated women in Islam. This is what softens our hearts. This is what humbles our soul. Think about how many people were mocking migrants and were angered to see them putting themselves and their families in grave danger just for hope of a better situation. Now think about the COVID-19 quarantine and the videos that came out, and how people reacted when the quarantine was announced. These are the types of reflections that we must continue to think about. We need to reflect why we as a human race were put on this earth, and how Allah has elevated us from the animal kingdom in order to worship Him. As Fatima Halawa mentioned earlier, we are a slave to Allah before anything else. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, He tells us, I created the jinn and mankind except that they should worship me alone. So this is the basis of our creation. We read this in Surah Al-Fatiha every day. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone do we worship, and to you alone we turn for help. But how many of us really think about this when we're reading this? It's really important that we accept this time in quarantine as qada and qadar, as a decree and destiny from Allah. And now it's up to us to choose which path we believe is best to follow. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to guide us in a straight path. Again, how many times do we read this in Surah Al-Fatiha during our prayer? Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us on the straight path, O Allah. In life, it's normal for us to have ups and downs, highs and lows. This is what our life is meant to be like. It's meant to be like a roller coaster. The main issue is what we do and what do we resort to when we're having those feelings of down and low. All of these answers can be found in the Quran and the Seerah of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. No one has made more sacrifices to our religion than Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And although Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam spent his entire life fighting to sustain a message from Allah that we have come to know and blessed to be part of this religion of Islam, we learn from the Seerah that he also hit rock bottom. This is famously known as the Year of Grief, where Muslims were thrown out of Mecca, sanctions were put against them, the Quraysh tribe wanted him killed, his beloved wife Khadija, who had supported him financially and emotionally, had passed away, and his uncle Abu Talib, his protector against the Quraysh tribe, had also passed away. His followers were starving and stranded in a desert, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ experienced deep grief. And during this low point, Allah opened up his heart and sent down to him Surah Yusuf. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, who Allah had given half of humankind's beauty, whose blood brothers conspired to kill him and resorted to throwing him into a well just from envy. Sayyidina Yusuf, a prophet who was son of a lineage of prophets, starting with Sayyidina Yaqub, who came from a noble family only to find himself sold into slavery, to be slandered by the king's wife, and then thrown into jail, which actually he raised his arms to Allah and made dua that being thrown into prison was better for him than accepting to commit a sin with the king's wife, and her name was Zulaykha. In a narrative hadith by Abu Huraira, Rasul was actually asked by one of the companions, who is the most honorable of them? Is one who is the most pious. Then they said, we're not asking about this. Then he said, well, then the most honorable man was Sayyidina Yusuf, the Prophet of Allah. He was the son of the Prophet of Allah, who was the son of Khalilullah, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Can you imagine someone of his stature still enduring all of this sorrow, all of this grief, and still having such strong faith in Allah? And not only that, when Sayyidina Yusuf's situation changed, he didn't change. So in his low and in his high, he still maintained that strong faith in Allah. Because when he meets his brothers again, who actually conspired to kill him and then decided to throw him into the well, he doesn't get mad or angry with them. Instead, he forgives them. He again shows us his noble character. He tells them, I have nothing against you, and may Allah forgive you. My dear Sakeena seekers, in the midst of anger, when someone has truly wronged us, let us remember the story of Sayyidina Yusuf and try to imitate his actions and noble character. SubhanAllah, just reading this makes all a virtue. We all know that. But going back to Allah will always help us find a way, even in the midst of isolation. We can see another great example of this from the Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. It's a city present day called Dawa. Many years, not a single person followed. Instead, he was mocked, he was made fun of. People just, he was like the laughing stock, you could say. So Allah promised Sayyidina Yusuf that the people had 3 days to stop their evil actions and seek refuge to Allah and go back to Allah. Otherwise, there would be great destruction. Sayyidina Yusuf went to the people and told them this. Of course, they laughed. They made fun of him. So he left. You can imagine Sayyidina Yunus's feeling during that time. Here, Allah shows us and allows us to draw a connection with our actions, because these are all normal human responses. How many times have we felt frustrated and disappointed with other people, or what, what if with what if they with sorry with what they've done to us. And if we have we tried to be patient and give them time, or did we confront them or ignore them? Because the Prophet ﷺ had left his people before Allah had permitted for him to go. And so Allah tells us in the Quran, indeed Yunus was on a ship, and he drew lots and was amongst the losers. Then the fish swallowed him, while he was blameworthy, and had he not been of those who exalted Allah, فَلَوْلَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُسَبِّحِينَ, he would have remained inside its belly until the day of resurrection. فَلَوْلَا أَنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُسَبِّحِينَ. I really want to emphasize this here. Sayyidina Yusuf continued to glorify Allah even in the stomach of the whale, or the big fish. And he continued to glorify Allah through tasbih. And then now we have this famous dua that we always say, and it can be found in Surah Al-Anbiya. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. There is no God but you, glorified be you. Truly, I have been of the wrongdoers. I urge all of you to try repeating this throughout the day, whether it be in between your prayers or when you're going through your everyday tasks. Because it's really important for us to remind ourselves to glorify Allah during the day, not just during our 5 prayers. How many times do we do our tasbih after prayer? And when we do, are we just running through the routine, or are we really, really reflecting? Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And really trying to formulate what we say in Arabic as khushu'. And I couldn't find the best translation for this, but Fatima said, a good way to describe this would be really deep, deep contemplation. This is when the word, it really reaches your heart and you feel it inside of you when you're saying it. Is this what we're feeling when we make tasbih? This is a time of reflection, my dear Sakeena seekers. It's time for us to pull back and look at our life from a bird's eye's view. Think about your daily actions. Think about what you see. Think about what your brain thinks. Think about what your hands touch. Think about what your lips speak. Are we using every part of our body to glorify and remember Allah, or to displease Him? As humans, we naturally gravitate towards each other, and we enjoy the sense of community around us. We feel that our Iman is being increased when everyone, we're all doing it together. We're all going to the mosque. We're all going to the Taraweeh. But we must ask ourselves, who are we spending our time with? Who are we surrounding ourselves with? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, when mentioning the people of the Kahf, the people of the cave in Surah Al-Kahf, we're asked to actually say this every Friday, that they were simple youth who saw isolation in time where their society was deeply immersed in idol worship and other false beliefs. Does this sound familiar? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, when the youth sought refuge in the cave, they said, "O Lord, grant us mercy from you and provide us with the right course in our affair." And then it goes on to say, and we relate to you their story with the truth. نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. Again, we relate to you the story of the people of the cave. They were youth who believed in Allah, and we increased them in guidance. We see the protagonists of this story, just like the stories we mentioned before, that as soon as you seek refuge and you go back to Allah, Allah reminds us that as soon as we put in that foot forward, He will help us increase our Iman and guidance. Because Allah wants the best for us. He wants us to be true believers. And where is this found? In a surah that we read every Friday, or at least we're asked to read this every Friday. So every Friday, especially during this Ramadan, I ask everyone to try to take advantage of your time and read Surah Al-Kahf. Another thing you could take away from this is the importance of your youth. Doing something during this time is the most important part of your time. Most people will go back to Allah and go to make Hajj. You know, if you look at a lot of, you know, our cultural backgrounds, this is what most people do. When they get older, it's like the right thing to do. They go to Hajj and they start practicing and they start praying. But how many of us are doing it in our youth during the most difficult time? One of the ways to increase our Iman and faith is also to surround ourselves with people who encourage our worship. This is really important because you want a sense of even a virtual community like we have today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, a good example is when someone is trying, he tells us in the Quran, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاوَةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ. And keep yourselves patient with those who call upon their Lord, or keep yourselves steadfast. So stick to those people who call upon their Lord in the morning and in the evening, seeking his countenance. These are the type of people we should surround ourselves with. A good example is when someone is trying to build a house. Let's say you wanted to build a house. You want to bring the best materials so that when you build your house, it will be of the highest quality, right? Because you don't want it to tear down somehow. Building relationships is very similar, especially those built under the intention that you love each other for Allah and that you bring each other closer to Allah and not vice versa. One of the 7 types of groups of people shaded on the Day of Judgment includes 2 people who love each other, and when they meet and depart, it's always for the sake of Allah. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed to have the internet and social media, which allows us to create virtual spaces, just as we've done today, to keep in touch with all of you beautiful Sakeena seekers. Building and maintaining relationships is important, and it's not always easy, but there are simple ways to do this. Bright smiles, nice and kind compliments, being caring to others, and constantly checking in on each other. I can tell you myself that every time I receive a nice message from someone, my heart becomes very happy, regardless of what type of day I'm having. Let this Ramadan be an opportunity to forge relationships, bring the ones that we already have together and make them stronger. Let this month pass with lots of love for each other for the sake of Allah. We always need to connect this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us in the Quran, show forgiveness, enjoin what is good, and turn away from the ignorant. Love and forgiveness go hand in hand. You cannot have a heart that is at peace if you are not actually saying, I forgive people, and not forgiving those around you, even if they have wronged you. And we've already seen that in the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. But I can't think of love in isolation without thinking about the tribulations that Maryam alayhi salam, who Allah had chosen over all of the women in the world. Think about what she must have endured when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the angel Gabriel to her at 16 years old and told her that she would be pregnant and that she would be giving birth to Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. So she had to isolate herself throughout her pregnancy, hiding from a society that would shame her and would never accept her in her pregnancy, as she was not married. And so in that moment, till when she was going to give birth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, and the pains of childbirth drove her to the trunk of the palm tree, and she said, oh, I wish I had died before this was in oblivion and was forgotten. So she actually asked that she wishes that she had died before even having to go through this. But he called her from below her, and all the scholars agree that this was Sayyidina Isa, and said, do not grieve, your Lord has provided beneath you a stream. Let's reflect on the story of Maryam. How many of us accept the qadr of Allah quickly when life throws at us different unexpected events? It's natural for humans to be so happy when Allah gives them what they want, and they say Alhamdulillah and they feel great. But do we accept this decree and destiny, this qada and qadr, even when it's not something that we thought that we'd wanted? Allah tells us this in the Quran. And for a man, when his Lord tries him and is generous to him and favors him, he says, my Lord has honored me. But when he tries him and restricts him with his provision, he says, "Oh, my Lord has humiliated me." So let us pray today for those who have been wronged, those who have been oppressed, people who have lost their God-given rights, those who have suffered war and starvation. Let us make dua for the less fortunate and hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the pandemic and forgives us during this wabah. Let us ask Allah that He makes us amongst those people who in His remembrance, their hearts are assured. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. Those who believed and whose hearts were assured by the remembrance of Allah. Unquestionably, by the remembrance of Allah, our hearts can be assured. Our hearts can be assured with patience, with prayer, with charity. But don't feel overburdened when you're experiencing hardship. Always go back to Allah. Pick up the Quran. Read the word of Allah. Reach out to sisters or other people around you, loved ones, who actually push you to do these types of activities. And let us always remember that with difficulty, there is always ease. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. I know that some of us, if not all of us, at some point will have their menstrual cycle and get sick and cannot fast this Ramadan. So I urge these sisters during this time, don't forget the power of tasbih. Don't forget the power of dua. Allah has put no barrier between us and Allah when we make dua to Him. And He says this to us. He's speaking to us in the Quran when He says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَاتَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. And when my servants ask you concerning me, then surely I am near. I answer the prayer of the suppliant when he asks and when he calls upon me. So they should answer my call and believe in me, that they may walk in the right path. This is really, really important to remember, my sisters, because a lot of times in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us, He's talking to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, and tell the mu'mineen, and tell the Muslims. But here it says, if they're asking you about me, tell them I am here. So I am with you. So when we make dua, we make it to Allah. Allah, alhamdulillah, is always with us. He is always with you in everything that you do. We mentioned this in the trivia questions as part of our countdown, that when Prophet ﷺ was stranded in the cave with Abu Bakr, what did he tell him? La tahzan, inna Allahu ma'ana. So all of these prophets, all of the chosen women in the Quran, alayhim salam, they all had the same attribute, that they all had the perseverance and they were all steadfast and they knew that Allah was always with them. They would not worry because they knew that Allah would take them out of any situation that they were in. So indeed, Allah is with us, especially today as we come together virtually in the remembrance of Allah. May Allah make our hearts assured and bring us together to remember and worship Him in this life and the hereafter. I would like to end this halaqah by listing some practical tips that you can do during this Ramadan to increase your Iman and your knowledge of the Quran. And then we will also post this on the group chat as well. The first practical tip is you can do competitions in the home. So if you're living with family, you can do it with your family. If you're living with housemates, you can do this as well. And each of you can have a competition reading Quran. This is actually very helpful, and some people kind of like that competition. The second thing we can do is learn about our deen. How do we learn about this? By reading the stories of prophets, reading about the companions, reading about the women in Islam. This is really important because we draw many conclusions from these stories. They are our superheroes. And alhamdulillah, now we have Google and we have many ways to, get sources from these, even YouTube videos. So this is a very good way for you to get closer with your family and others that you share your living space with. Another thing you can do is help your family or housemates by cooking, especially for your family, and making them smile and saying kind things to them. Another thing you can do is also ask everyone you love for forgiveness. This is very important because the month of Ramadan is a time for us to ask forgiveness from Allah, but it's also a time that we can ask forgiveness from others around us. Another thing we can do is to tell a non-Muslim about Ramadan or Islam. Never, seize the opportunity to make da'wah. Always take an opportunity. If you're having a talk, and I don't mean you have to stand outside and make pamphlets and hand them out or anything. No, what I mean is if you're having a meeting and someone says, how are you today? You can say, actually, we started fasting, like that. Talk about Ramadan, talk about hijab, talk about anything, answer people's questions about Islam. Always be that person to show them our beautiful religion. Another thing that we can do is read Surah Al-Fajr. Surah Al-Fajr is one of the most beautiful, they're all beautiful surahs, but it's one of the most beautiful surahs that puts together, especially our life as it is at the moment with isolation. So I urge everyone, after Surah Al-Fajr, if you have a little bit of time, just sit down and try to read Surah Al-Fajr and reflect with yourself or with your family or household members. Another thing we can also do, another practical tip, could be using social media for good. Anything that you share, and this is the hadith that Rasulullah told us, anything that, even if it's a small word or ayah, we should do this. We should try to share this with those around us. We should try to share it on social media, whether it be an ayah from the Quran that you came across maybe while you were reading Quran that day, or a hadith, or something you learned about one of the prophets, one of the companions that day. Always try to share this with other people. Another thing you can do is call someone that you haven't spoken to in a long time, whether it be a distant relative or a friend. This is really important, and try to say something really kind to them. I think this is one of the things that we can do this Ramadan. I think many of us, we can think of someone that we haven't spoken to in a long time. Another thing that we can do is help others if you can with money, and if you can't with your time. We have many brothers and sisters that I heard about through my friend that are here in Ireland, at least. They're living in direct provision, and they're able to experience the Ramadan that we have right now to come for ourselves. So if you can help people who are in need during this Ramadan, one thing you should know that the Prophet ﷺ was the most charitable during Ramadan. He was charitable throughout the year, but he was the most charitable person during Ramadan because he knew that everything that we do now is actually counts as even more for us, inshallah, and may Allah forgive us. Lastly, I want you to renew your intention with Allah every day. This is something really important. I think many of us are aware of it, but we forget to do it. So I think this is something to try every day, renew your intention with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think it could be something very beneficial for all of us. Lastly, I just want to end with a very nice dua, inshallah. And it's يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين. And with that, I'd like to conclude my halaqah for today. I'd like to thank everyone here for attending and for listening. Now I'll just see if anyone has any questions, and I'll give the platform to Fatima. MashaAllah, she was the one who put the slides together. So I'll let her take it from now on.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Sana, for this beautiful reminder. I think I'm just not entirely sure if anyone has, I think just to do this more effectively in a way, if anyone has any questions, maybe in the screen at the bottom, you can or on your name when you go into the chat, you can just raise your hands, and that way, yes. So we have Asma and then Aisha. So yeah, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for this insightful and amazing halaqah. This is really great, but I have really very repeated kind of, I overthink of this so much that I've been raised in a very conservative family, and I've been raised on these stories of Prophet, and I know my religion well, but the thing that I face is sometimes I lack deep meanings because I know this stuff. When you word a repeated kind of term, mean? So here comes like the khushu is really hard to attain and situation, and I don't know if you girls like have experienced such thing in your life or spiritual life. Like how do you, I don't know, uplift yourself spiritually? Like every Ramadan comes and go, like the same to verse of Quran and what I mean, but like personally when doing the things many times, I feel like, okay, I know this, I need new, you know what I mean? So I lose this sense of khushu. So if anyone has experienced this before and have any tips to help here, I like too much appreciate that.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Asma.
Fatima, do you want to take it and then I can say something, or?
Okay, so I think for me,
I think
and
we can both relate to this very much, because we both come from a conservative family. So I can definitely see where she's coming from. That sometimes a lot of the ibadah becomes, I think what she's saying is it becomes routine, because you've been doing this your entire life. And so you're like, okay, like sometimes you think maybe I'm losing my sense of khushu' because I've just been doing this my entire life. Like I already know this and I already know that.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I feel afraid of God, like leaving the whole thing, you know what I mean? But I haven't come to this end, but I'm afraid, you know?
Yeah. No, Asma, I think we all feel this. I think we're all human beings. And like I was saying at the beginning of the talk, we all have our highs and our lows. And we all know these stories, but sometimes we forget the meaning of those stories until we're put in a certain situation. You know, if you're, let's say, like, you know, your life is going well for you, you don't really think about, you know, people suffering, or, you know, people going through unimaginable circumstances. And so I think one of the things that I like to do always is try to change it up. So if you're kind of living a routine, try to change your routine. Aside from, you know, the usual ibadat of praying 5 times a day, you know, reading Quran, try to do something new. You know, if you have knowledge, give it to other people. You know, this is something that we Muslims, we're actually we're supposed to be doing. You know, it's actually a right of another Muslim on you that you share any knowledge in Islam that you have. So this is one of the ways that you can kind of, you know, maybe, you know, break that routine. Another thing that I like to do is, you know, I always like to try to connect with people who know more than me. You know, this is something even in the professional world, you know, people, they always tell you to surround yourself with people who know more than you. And because, you know, subhanAllah, you know, even if when you grow up in a conservative family, there are things that you kind of just followed your parents, and sometimes you didn't even give yourself an opportunity to go and learn it yourself. You have to learn it yourself. It's not enough. Like, you know, for me, for many years, I thought it was very easy to just pick up the phone and just ask my mom and ask my dad, and that was it. No, Islam is all about finding yourself by yourself as well, you know? So it's really important to, you know, reach out to people who you feel know more than you. You know, seek knowledge from them. You know, read a book that, you know, you haven't read about, maybe fiqh or something that you weren't familiar with before. You know, I just actually, like a few months ago, I started to read a book about Tawheed. And subhanAllah, there were so many things I had no idea about. You might know what the idea is, but these specific details are very, very important part of our Iman. And they actually make you feel steadfast. And then just the last thing I wanted to tell you is, you know, don't feel, you know, if you're having these feelings sometimes like, okay, this routine, you're not alone. You know, we all have these feelings at some point in our life, and it comes and goes. You know, it's not something that you just have it once and then, you know, you never have it again. And I think that's what it is. You know, Islam is all about the jihad. It's all about the struggle, you know. And so as long as you're struggling, and when out of that struggle, you're becoming better and you're supporting yourself in a positive way, I think that's the important takeaway message.
I definitely agree. I think sometimes we do get lost in the element of like, okay, how has this deen actually come into place into our lives? And I think the most important thing that always crosses my mind in how the saying that al-iman yazid wa yanqus, so the iman goes up and low, and it's a natural process for us humans, right? Because if there was there was an always consistent high to our iman, then suddenly we wouldn't realize the importance of it or appreciate it when it's actually when it's at its highest. And I think it was maybe Sayyidina Umar who said, like, you know, even if we cannot if we're not able to cry, then fake crying. It's that work that we put into our ibadah that then ultimately will lead to it becoming better. So if we cannot, let's say for example, practice patience, fake it till like you're able to then or like, I don't know, put it in, like place it until you're actually able to practice it. So with that, it's like an element, because sometimes we get discouraged, right? I'm not feeling this ibadah, I'm not it's not hitting for me. Okay, so what shall I do? Khalas, I'm not really, like, I think it's about actually choosing a specific ibadah, and we each have our own one that connects deeply with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For some of us it may be the Quran, for some of us it may be the dua, for some of us it may be different elements of it. It may be the stories of the Prophet. For some of us it's actually understanding different elements of the of the Islam. And I think it's really, really important to just really connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to what suits us, and not necessarily to what may suit others, right? So let's say for example, within my siblings or whatever, each one of us connects differently, and it's really important to understand that and how unique we are as humans in that factor. But also the concept of just keeping and trying, but also, like, I think added to what Sana says, is surrounding yourself with people that may encourage you even when you're not feeling it, and not being hard on yourself, because a lot of the times we can be very, very hard on ourselves and be like, okay, I'm not feeling it now, khalas, that's it, I'm not going to give it another try, or I'm not going to give it another shot. But anything in life, and especially like the concept of what we're dealing with now and how difficult it is, and the isolation that we're all in, and sometimes, you know, not having even the space to like be able to just connect internally within ourselves, we need to try and do that, whatever we're giving ourselves, like 5 to 10 minutes connecting with ourselves. So then I think ultimately when we're able to connect with ourselves, it becomes easier to connect with Rabb al-Alameen. I think Asia had, I'm not sure, Esma, if that kind of covers your answer in a way. So we have also Aisha here, who's
Asia, right?
Sorry, Asia. Asia, did you have a question?
Asia Nazaruddin.
Okay. Asia, someone just actually shared something really beautiful here, and she says that that to be of service to others by helping those in need, your heart becomes softened to your own vulnerabilities. So that was shared by Maryam, and I think it's beautiful, and it actually she raises a very important point.
Yeah, no, that was really beautiful, because I remember, I'm 30 years old now, but I remember when I was, 20, 21, kind of trying to find my place. I was part of the Muslim Association. The one thing that really, really encouraged me and really helped me was always giving back to other people, because that really, not only does it soften your heart, but it allows you to like remember that this life is much bigger than you are. A lot of times if you're comfortable, I grew up very comfortable, so I didn't see, like, I didn't grow up maybe in at least like in the parts of America that I grew up with. I didn't have that ability to see, like, I saw, I guess, homeless people when I went to San Francisco, but that was my only exposure, and it wasn't until, subhanAllah, I'm 30 years old now, that I went to Hajj, and I noticed that only 1% of us Muslim people are actually well off, that probably most of the Muslim population around the world are struggling and suffering. And when you see that, you really, really understand that you are so small and your problems are so small that people don't even have food to eat. Just the basics of everyday life, they don't even have it. And I think just to know that and to reflect that makes you a better person, because it makes you realize that you are so, you're just a small, tiny part of this huge life. SubhanAllah, someone during my PhD, they told me, one of my supervisors told me something very funny. And she told me, I'm going to tell you right now, and I don't want you to get your hopes up too much, because whatever you do is going to be basically just like a needle in a haystack, of contributions to the scientific world. And then I thought to myself, you know what? Islam is the same way. You have to think of yourself. You're just a needle, and billions of people, of trillions of people that have come to this world and have passed. So the main thing that you want to think about is, what footprint are you going to leave on this earth? This is the most important thing. What are you going to leave on this earth? How are people going to remember you? Are they going to remember you in a good way, or are they not going to remember you at all? Some people come to this earth and leave this earth and nobody hears about it, And I'm not talking about fame. I'm not talking about becoming famous or something. No, I'm talking about doing things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us to do in this life, giving charity, being kind to our parents, bir al-walidain. You can't imagine how important this is in our life, giving charity and helping those around us. This is how we will be remembered, So I think this is how we can kind of break through our daily routine and what we kind of do all the time, and see that there's a bigger world out there for us, and there's many ways that we can help others and that we can give back, and that in return is also helping us, subhanallah. We can be selfish too in this situation.
Salam.
About thank you first of all for the talk about earlier, and the last point that you discussed about like tips for Ramadan. I feel that I don't know if I'm the only one, but I find it extremely difficult to like ask for forgiveness, especially like from my parents. Probably my heart's not strong enough, or I have like kibr or pride inside me. Do you have anything to help me? Because I find that extremely very difficult, and I want to improve myself. Thank you.
جزاك الله خير أسيا. سناء.
Jazakallah khair, Asya. That was very powerful what you said, and don't feel that you're the only one. I think we all have a sense of pride, and we all have a hard time sometimes, saying things that we want to say. But and I don't want to, I'm not trying to be too funny to everyone today, but the slogan for Nike is just do it. Sometimes in Islam you have to do it. In psychology, what they teach you is that you can't be motivated unless you start the action. So it's not like, you get motivated and then you do the action. Actually, you have to start the action, and by doing the action, you will be motivated. So the first thing you can do is, I would urge you to do, I guess, is, to always go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seek, go back to Allah, speak to Allah and say, ask for forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then try to push yourself as much as you can. We have to, this is kind of the perfect time to do this, and if you don't know how to get it out, just have it in conversation. I don't know exactly, what your day-to-day, relationship is or whatnot, but if you're, let's say if you're cooking together, if you're with your parents, or they do something for you that day, when you say thank you, say, what, I want you to forgive me for anything that I've done. Just, you have to, at some point you will have to own up to it, because that's the one thing that we're taught from reading all of these stories. You can see with Sayyidina Yusuf, subhanallah, how many people would do that in this world, honestly. Most of us would probably be mad if someone just said something about us, even if it was true. So at some point you will just do it, but definitely, ask Allah for help, to just, overcome that barrier, and just find the right opportunity as well. Even if it's in writing, if you can't say it out loud, say it in writing, send a text message or something. And I think that will open up, break that barrier somehow. Everyone's relationship with their parents is different. So just try to gauge and see, what your relationship is like, and, how do you usually communicate, and put it in there. Maybe make them a card, and put it there. But definitely this is something, we have to kind of force ourselves to do. I have to force myself to do it. And it's something that inshallah, may Allah give you the strength. Yani we all make dua, yani may Allah give you and all of us the strength to ask forgiveness even when we're wronged, even when we are wronged, you know, just like Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he did nothing wrong. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that strength inshallah to be able to even apologize and, you know, ask for forgiveness even from those that have wronged us 100%. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Fatima.
I think I can't really add much to what Sanat had said, but I think one of the things is she said that Sanat mentioned, but it's really emphasis on making dua, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows each one of us to be able to ask for forgiveness when is needed, and even when it's not needed, like when it's not needed, because one of the things, it is a difficult thing, and like I know for myself, even spending time at home now, just being in lockdown, and you have all, like, you know, your siblings in front of you, or, you know, getting into arguments or whatever, and it can be really difficult because you're kind of like not going out or giving yourself that headspace to just come back in and be able to give it a little bit of time. So I would probably just really emphasize on the fact of like making dua and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease it, and also for the individual who you say it to accept it, because there's nothing worse as well than coming out and then asking for forgiveness, and it becomes like a backlash to you. And I think the other thing is like looking at the bigger purpose. So it's like, okay, yes, as Fatima, for example, it's very difficult for me to apologize, but why am I doing it? What's the purpose behind me doing it? And kind of like linking it back to the deeper meaning for you, it allows it to become a little bit more easier in that sense. I always remember you know, the story of when the Sahaba were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and they were gathering, and someone walks in through the door, and he said, the Prophet ﷺ, just before they walk into through the door, he says, the person who's going to walk in through this door next is guaranteed Jannah. And the next day happened the same situation, that we're sitting together with the Prophet ﷺ was sitting together with the Sahaba and with his companions, and he says the next person who walks through this door is from Jannah, is from the people of Jannah. And the same exact person walked in, and then the third day it happened again, and the same exact person walked in. So the Sahaba were like mesmerized. Okay, why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chosen this individual to be from the people of Jannah? So one of the Sahabas, what he actually did was he pretended that he was like he was from you know, he was on a journey, and if he could go and actually stay over in this individual's house. And at the time back then, it was very possible for people to stay, like you had the possibility of staying over, but up to 3 days. So then after that, you would have had to excuse yourself. So he came over to this man's house, and he knocked at his door, and he said, can you please maybe allow me to stay for the next 3 days? And he did. So every day he observed. For the first day he sat with him, he observed him. Okay, what is he doing different in that sense? And he didn't do anything out of the usual. Like to him, he was going up, praying qiyam, then going to sleep. It wasn't something that was very unique, that this companion could tell, okay, this is something that I would be like, okay, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make him from the people of Jannah. Until the 3 days have passed, and the same exact thing. So then as a Sahaba was just leaving, he realized, he's like, okay, I didn't gain any information. I think I might just bluntly like just ask him. So he actually does. He goes out and he asks him, and as he does, then he says, I'm just wondering that, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, you've walked in for the past 3 days, and he said that you are from the people of Jannah, and what is it that you do? And then he's like, I can't recall anything that I do. I fast, you know, I pray, like the usual thing, but I do one thing, and it's before I go to bed, I don't hold any grudges against anyone. And subhanAllah, sometimes when we don't hold, that is so magnificent in of itself, to understand what is that weight that we're holding, and asking forgiveness. So then, because sometimes when we don't ask for forgiveness as well, there's that weight that we have, and we hold grudges against individuals. But ultimately, once we go out and do that, it becomes a little bit easier, and we're able to kind of like surpass that element. So I think that is always key, is just looking at the bigger picture and understanding. And yes, at times you feel like a little bit broken in that sense, but in the longer run, it will have a little bit more of a better impact. Allahu Alam. Okay, girls and Sakeena seekers, I'm also cautious and aware of time. And similar to what we said, inshallah, so we'll be having this 4 to 5 every Monday and Thursday at 4 p.m. to 4 to 5 p.m. inshallah, GMT +1, so that's like Irish time, UK time. And with that, I'm not entirely sure, Sanat, do you have anything you'd like to add before inshallah we end?
No, actually, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. I'd like to also let you guys know that we have a variety of content coming up as well. We're going to be talking about the Quran and Ramadan. We're going to talk about different tips that which you can eat for suhoor, so different exercise and health and nutrition. I'll be able to give you guys, inshallah, some of the things that I've learned while I've been doing my PhD. We'll be able to talk about creativity, about mental health as well, so about the soul and the nafs. So we have a variety of content prepared for everyone, so please stay tuned. And I did see a comment just come in right now asking for the du'as and dhikrs that we've mentioned today, and that also we can share, and we're happy. We'll put that in a nice, we'll put that as part of the presentation slides for today. And we'll share them with everyone. So otherwise, yeah, I don't have anything else to add, Fatima.
Jazakumullah khair, everyone, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all during this month. Please do keep all of us in our, remember each other in our du'as, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a place, a blessed place for all of us to be able to connect and virtually have a small little get together. So with that, I end. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Please stay safe, be kind to yourselves, but most importantly, enjoy your time during this blessed month of Ramadan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.